Please. Right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Bharad Ahuti Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Bharad Ahuti Yasodhanandana Brajajana Randahuna Yasodhanandana Brajajana Randahuna Yamuna Tera Padachate Yamuna Tera Padachate Jai Hurada Padhuva Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopi Nana Balaba Giri Vadadhati Gopi Nana Balaba Giri Vadadhati Yasodananda Bhaja Jananandana Yasodananda Bhaja Jananandana Yamuna Tera Vanachante Yamuna Tera Vanachante Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Shimad His Divine Grace via Sadananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Prem say Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Gadadha Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath, Shyama Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maturanam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Lasudeva Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Go Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dejatarni. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 40th Chapter, Text 27. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Anotsahe Aham Kripana De Kama Karma Atang Manaha Rodham Pramati Bish Chakshire Riyamanam Itas Tataha Notsaheham Kripanadi Kama Karma Hatam Manaha Rodham Pramati Bish Chakshire Riyamanam Notsaheham Kripanadi Kama Karma Hatam Manaha Rodham Brahmati Bhishchakshar Riyamanam Itastata Notsaheham Kripanadi Kama Karma Hatam Manaha Rodham Brahmati Bhishchakshar Riyamanam Okay. All right. Na utsahe. I'm not able to find the strength. Actually, interesting that word, utsahe, utsaha. It's sometimes translated by Prabhupada as enthusiasm. It's really festival. Yeah, utsaha, festival. Well, in a festival, you're enthusiastic. So, so in other words, the determination, the strength, the enthusiasm. We're going to talk about that. Aham, I, kripana, crippled. D, whose intelligence, kama, by material desires, karma, and material activities. Hatam, disturbed. Manaha, my mind. Rodam, to keep in check. Pramatibihi, which are very powerful and willful. Cha, and akshay, by the senses. Riyamanam, being dragged. Itta, tataha, here and there. So translation, my intelligence is so crippled that I cannot find the strength to curb my mind, which is disturbed by material desires and activities and constantly dragged here and there by my obstinate senses. Shoot. You can repeat, my intelligence is so crippled that I cannot find the strength to curb my mind, which is disturbed by material desires and activities and constantly dragged here and there by my obstinate senses. So there's no purport by the followers of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. And so there's short purports by some of the acharyas, and we can read those purports, commentaries. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states, lacking intelligence, kripanadi, I cannot stop the foolish mind pulled by the strong pramatibi senses. Akshay. Jiva Goswami says, I cannot control my mind, tormented by actions instigated by previous impressions and pulled by the eye and other senses, which give trouble because of contacting material objects. And finally, Sanatana Goswami says, although I am your devotee, I'm in a fallen condition, or though I know all this, I am in this condition. Kama is the desire for enjoyment. Karma is its cause. My mind, struggling with desire and karma, is pulled everywhere for sense objects. Itas tata. So again, the verse. Notsaheham kripanadi kama karma hatam manaha rodham pramati bischakshar riyamanam itas tataha. So Om Gana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. So we find Lord Shabbadev says about the conditions, Nunam Pramata Kurte Vikarma Yarindriya Priti Apranoti. That one who is very attached to the senses, considers the senses very dear, then Nunam Pramata Kurte Vikarma. Then he becomes, actually Prabhupada described this as pramata or pramada as still more mad. Of course, mad in this particular sense doesn't mean going to the mental institution. But mad in this particular sense means one is an illusion. Like in the previous verse we talked about, not we, but Jadharani talked about the mirage in the desert. Considering something to be there, which is not there. Also, there's other types of illusion, which seeing something that is there, but is actually something different, or not seeing something that is there. So these are different types of illusion. And of course, she mentioned the 4 defects of the conditioned soul: tendency to be illusion, imperfect senses, making mistakes, and the cheating propensity. So that was the previous verse. So Lord Rishabhadeva says, nunam prabhata kurute vikarma, that one who actually considers the senses to be very dear, yadindriya priti apranoti, then he commits vikarmic activities. Of course, here we don't find Akrura committing vikarmic activities. In one sense, he can consider not vikarmic, but he's thinking of karmic activities. Karmic activities means, in this particular context, activities in accordance with the Vedic injunctions in this material world, but not devotional activities. Devotional activities are called akarma, activities which have no results in them. Of course, the word karma can also mean work, but in this particular context, it means the reaction for some particular activity in this material world. So therefore, Akrura is lamenting about the uncontrolled mind and senses, and we find in the Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter, Arjuna also makes a similar statement, Chanchala Himanaha Krishna, Pramati Balavadridam, Tasyaham Nigraham Manye, or Iva Shudushkaram. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and more difficult than controlling the wind. And so Arjuna's, he's been given all these instructions by Krishna as to how to perform this Raja Yoga, Hatha Yoga. And he says, impossible, can't control the mind. And we find a similar statement in this particular verse, that my mind is all over the place. And also in the Bhagavad Gita, the 2nd chapter, Bhoga Ishvarya Prasaktanam, Taya Pratichetasam Vyavasayatmaka Buddhir Samado Navatiyate. Those who are attached to Bhoga and Aishvarya, the Bhoga means sense enjoyment, and opulence, Prasaktanam, attached to those things, then Vyavasayatmaka Buddhir Samado Navatiyate, they cannot actually be one-pointed, determined, and control the mind. And also we find in one of the previous verses, 2 verses before, Vyavasayatmaka Buddhir Ekeka Kornanda Dana Bo Shaktas Tvanantas Cha. Those who are on this path of devotional service their minds are one-pointed. In other words, Vyavasayat Ekeha Kornanda, Eka means one. And those who are not on the path of devotional service, their mind is many branched, goes off in many different directions here and there. And of course, we find that is because those who are not in devotional service are under the modes of material nature. And under the modes of material nature, as described by Krishna in the Gita, sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the mode of passion and ignorance. Sometimes the mode of passion becomes prominent, defeating goodness and ignorance. Sometimes the mode of ignorance. So there's continual fluctuations in the influence of the modes of material nature. And the mind is influenced by different people in the different modes, or different situations in the different modes, or different foods in the different modes. Actually, quite a bit of the Bhagavad Gita is dealing with the modes of nature and the material energy itself. So, therefore, the only way to get out of the modes is to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And here we find Uddhava lamenting, and there's a very similar lamentation that I wanted to read from in the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, sorry, from Devahuti, who's also lamenting that she's actually very sick of the disturbances and the uncontrolled mind. And because of that, she's surrendering to the Supreme Personality of God. And I'm going to read this verse. It's from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Devahutir Uvacha. What's that? I don't remember the name of the verse. It's one of my favorite verses. Devahutir Uvacha Nirvana Nitaram Bhuman Asadindriya Tarshana. She's speaking, of course, this to Lord Kapiladeva, who happens to be her son. So this is the mood that she's setting in the same way that Akrura is setting the mood of approaching Krishna, and the mood of humility. And in the Shikshashka, we actually find a similar mood. Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram, Pati Tamam Vishame Bhavambudo, Kripaya Tavapada Pankaja, Stita Duli Sadrasam Vichintia, O son of Maharaj Nanda, I am your eternal servant, but somehow or other I've fallen down into this horrible ocean of material suffering. Please fix me up as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. So there's this mood of surrender, humility, that's really important in order to be able to control the senses. So here, let me read this verse. Nirvana Nikarambumam Nasadindriya Tarshanat Yena Sambhavyamanena Prapanandam Tama Prabhu. So in this verse, Devahuti is saying, I am very sick of the disturbances caused by my material senses. Now, this is actually a prerequisite to becoming Krishna conscious. You have to be very sick of this, frustrated, materially frustrated. Let me repeat that again. I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. And let me read Srila Prabhupada's purport. Here the word asadindriya tarshanat is significant. Asat means impermanent, temporary, and indriya means senses. Thus, asad indriya tarshanat means from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body. We are evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence, sometimes in a human body, sometimes in an animal body, and therefore the engagements of our material senses are also changing. Anything which changes is called temporary or asat. Also, let me make some reference to the Bhagavad Gita. Asato vijate bhavo navavo vijate sataha ubayarapi drishtavantas 20 tattvadarshavi, in which Krishna says the sages consider those things that are asat or temporary to be in one sense unreal. I mean, not that they don't exist. That would not be our philosophy. But they exist temporarily, so they're not considered to have substantial reality. Just like oftentimes they use the example of a soap bubble. A soap bubble actually has some existence, but it's not a significant existence. So in one sense, we consider a soap bubble to be unreal. However, because this soap bubble of our lives lasts for utmost, as Prabhupada would say, 100 years, we consider it to be real. But it's just as unreal as a soap bubble. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Just as unreal as a dream that lasts 20 minutes, soap bubble that lasts a few seconds, or a life that lasts 100 years. Let me continue. We should know that beyond these temporary senses are permanent senses, which are now covered by the material body. The permanent senses, being contaminated by matter, are not acting properly. Devotional service, therefore, involves freeing the senses from this contamination. Sarvopati Vinir Bhuktam, Tatvena Nirmalam, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam, Bhakti Vichate. Freeing the senses from their designated position by engaging in Krishna service. When the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in the purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached Sad Indriya, or eternal sensory activities. Eternal sensory activities are called devotional service, whereas temporary sensory activities are called sense gratification. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Let me repeat that. It's really important. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there's no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Devahuti expressed that she was tired. Now that her husband had left home, she wanted to get relief by hearing the instructions of Lord Kapila. It's a very, very important verse. The instructions of Devahuti, one of the interactions that Devahuti had with Lord Kapila Dev. So the question is, in this particular verse, we have the word, we want to find out, where these material desires come from. So there's one source of the material desires that are mentioned in this verse, which is karma. Now you may say, karma means activities, karma means a reaction to activities, but also as part of the reaction to material activities, you get something called a kutana bija. That means, kuta, the inclination, and the bija, the seed of material desires. It's like a vicious, we describe this when we're talking about the nectar devotion, it's like a vicious cycle. You get the inclination and the seed of material desires, and that impels you. You're not forced. You can actually decide to be Krishna conscious at any point, but it impels you. It pushes you to commit further activities in this material world. Further, either sinful or pious activities. Both sinful and pious activities are described because pious activities also bring on particular desires that entangle you in this material world. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes that the mode of goodness is purifying, but one becomes attached to a sense of happiness, just like I was recently in Fiji. And, we'd go out sometimes in the morning, the sun is rising on the beach. Very beautiful. And just thinking, this is the life. This is the life, and the water is, warm and everything like that. So the water, it's warm, the sun, the waves gently washing on the shore, relaxing you, thinking like that. I said, wow, this is Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. So, not really. So you become attached. I mean, that's really, of course, somehow I'm thinking, well, where's Krishna behind all this? Well, it's Krishna's energy. I'm trying to my best to connect it to Krishna, trying my utmost, although it's a real struggle. Many devotees say, I'm seeing Krishna everywhere. I got to be honest, it's hard to remember. Just to be frank, some devotees say, well, I'm seeing Krishna in the waves and the sun. It's so beautiful. Yes, a pure devotee sees like that, but you're actually saying that you see Krishna, but actually, 90%, 99%, you're not seeing Krishna. You're actually just seeing the waves in the ocean and thinking how wonderful it is. So, not commenting on any particular individual. So, anyway, so that's the mode of goodness. And then it develops a desire, I should just stay here on the beach. Why do I have to go to North Carolina, And I didn't think like that. Because the Radha Lokananda are much more attractive than some stupid waves washing on the beach. It's just water, when you analyze everything, and using Sankhya philosophy, analyzing. This is just water, earth, water, fire, air, ether. It's in my mind, intelligence, and false ego. So Yeah, Radha Golokananda. So you think of Radha Golokananda as much more attractive than some ocean, isn't it? I'd much rather be in front of them than be in an ocean. And so anyway, so that's a mode of goodness actually can stir up material desires, and that gives you the kuta and the bija for that. And then you continue that and you get more karma or vikarma or whatever. And it's just like it's a cycle. It goes on and on and on and on and on. It creates your desires. You embrace your desires, you enact to fulfill those desires, you act to fulfill those desires, and then you get more desires, and nothing's stable. So that's why karma is very much connected, or your activity is very much connected with kama. Kama means, sometimes it's described as lust, but the desire to enjoy this material world. It's not only like the sexual expression, but any sort of like desire to enjoy the tongue or the belly, the genitals, or the mind, or anger in words as described. So anyway, so the question is, how do we get out of this vicious cycle? So in this particular verse, you have utsahe, utsaha, enthusiasm, festival, etc., like that. So Krishna gives us, or Srila Rupa Goswami gives us the methodology for getting out of this vicious cycle. And he says, utsahan, one should be enthusiastic. Of course, utsahan is based upon nischayat. The one actually has to have some faith. Shraddha Shabde Vishad Sakahe Sudrida Nischaya. The faith that, Krishna consciousness is real. And it takes a while to develop that faith. And also, not only Krishna consciousness is real, but if I simply do what Krishna wants, then my desires will be satisfied. Not that I will always get the object of my desires, but the desires will be satisfied because I'll be Krishna conscious, and those desires will dissipate. Like it's described, the devotional service dissolves the subtle body. That's pretty good, which doesn't mean that you're left without a mind and intelligence. When you read that, dissolves, it won't have a mind, intelligence. You see that, my subtle body is dissolved. No, but it actually, as Prabhupada describes here, when you dissolve the subtle body, the real mind comes out. I was actually listening to a class that probably was very explicit about this morning, that as soon as you get rid of this false ego, the real ego becomes manifest. In other words, devotional service is inherent. It's just a question of Chaito Darpana Marjana, just of cleansing the heart through the process of devotional service. Prabhupada said it's not a question of an artificial imposition on the mind. So Utsaha and Nischayat, and actually all these three are very much connected. Utsaha, Nischayat, Daryat. Because if one has enthusiasm, one has faith, then one will naturally be enthusiastic. As I mentioned this verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that's Radha Shabde Vishas Sakahe Sudrida Nischaya, that one has faith in simply doing what's mentioned, what Krishna wants, everything will be accomplished. Then automatically one becomes patient. Many times we find people come to the Krishna conscious movement who are not patient, who accept or expect to become pure devotees in 10 minutes or less, Like, I remember there was one impersonalist, or it wasn't really an impersonalist, a cheater, who would somehow either he'd touch your eyelids and you see a white flash and you got realization like that from such an activity. So people want something cheap, or they want to take a pill and become Krishna conscious. There's one person in India who said that Krishna has appeared as a pill in Kali Yuga, LSD. It's a nonsense, absolute nonsense. So one has to be very, very patient. It's on this yet dariyat, patient, enthusiastic, and conviction. Yes, I'm convinced. And it sometimes it takes some time to develop this particular conviction, but from conviction, patience and enthusiasm come. It's on this yet that tata karma vartana, and then one begins to follow the process of Krishna consciousness enthusiastically, and avoid things that would cause one to deviate from Krishna Sangos Jagat. That means avoiding bad association or things that could contaminate one's mind and cause further desires to arise, like we were talking about, associate with the modes of nature, karma vartana, sangos chagas, satovrite, and then one begins to follow in the footsteps and study the great personalities. The bell keeps ringing. Nobody knows who the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. So anyway, so if one executes that, then naturally the mind will become peaceful. You become one-pointed and determined, and so your desires will gradually dissipate. Now, there's actually other sources. Actually, one thing I forgot to mention is that we talked about how karma and vikarma cause material desires, but also offenses cause material desires. Offenses cause material. This is according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that when we commit offenses, it's not only the karma, the cycle we talked about before, the karma called kutan bija, can manifest material desires in our heart. But actually, if we offend devotees, offend the holy places, offend the deities, then the material desires and confusion and lack of faith can manifest in our heart because of that. And then another source of material desires, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, is just one's own pride or the byproducts of bhakti as one advances in devotional service and gets, appreciation or gets realization or is able to do something nicely for Krishna. He addressed the deities nicely, or he gave a nice class for Krishna. So one has to be very careful about these causes of anarthas, because there's more anarthas than just kama or lust. There's kama krota, there's anger, that's an anartha. Kama krota mada, illusion, matsarya, being envious of other people. And, fear is an anartha too. Being fearful of, bhaya, because one is seeing the duality of this material world, one actually becomes very fearful of different things. It's like when you go to the doctor, you're afraid, what are they going to find out? And sometimes you don't even do a particular test because they're afraid you're going to find it out. I mean, I've seen that happen sometimes. Maybe I shouldn't have my blood pressure tested today because I'm afraid of what's going to happen. So if I don't have it tested, then I won't have high blood pressure. It's like that. Sometimes we avoid something out of fear. We avoid having a particular diagnosis because we're afraid what the diagnosis will say. And then therefore it's like the ostrich and putting his head in the sand. So all these things are in arthas and they all disturb the mind. And so we should pray in this abject mood that Krura is manifesting here to Krishna. Krishna and also Devahuti is manifesting. That I'm sick of these disturbances. Help me. Prabhanandam Adam Tama. Prabhanandam was the last word. Prabhanandam Tama Prabhu. I am surrendering unto you, my dear master. And in this way, with this particular mood of surrender, we can actually make some spiritual advancement and humility. So, any questions or comments? We got 3 more minutes for class. Yes. We got 2 Matajis asking questions. Now let Gopi Ji. Gopi. Yeah, sinful. It's Krishna conscious. It's not neutral, but it's uh there's there's sinful, there's pious activities, and I can't think of anything neutral. Maybe Mother Irma knows there's something neutral. Yeah, that's it. That's all that there is. And it's just the modes of nature. One just sees the modes of nature being active in this material world. There's nothing neutral. I guess when you're under anesthesia or something like that, you're not committing to be karma because uh you're not actually subject to what's going on in the mind. So I guess anesthesia would be an answer to that. Not sleeping, because sleeping is also under the jurisdiction of karma and be karma. So, yes. Right. Well, it's not, you're not attached or detached to the objects of this world, but you're sick that the attachment and detachment is the sick of the disturbance the attachment and detachment are causing. You're not sick of the object. Sometimes you'll see brahmacharis, they want to spit at the ladies and consider the ladies to be the cause of their lust. But one should be sick of the attachment that one has, not of the object. Yeah, attachment. Attachment and repulsion are actually, as Prabhupada would say, opposite sides of the same coin. Just like, oh, I don't want to see pizza anymore. But, just like in my own case, I gave up eating certain things, not because I started to develop a distaste for them. I mean, like sometimes they have this methodology of curing people from smoking cigarettes by giving them something bitter at the same time. This aversion therapy, it's called. And that's not really our process of Krishna consciousness. I stopped eating certain things because they weren't helpful to my own ability to serve Krishna. So everything was based on Krishna. So the renunciation is based on maximizing your service to Krishna, maximizing your devotion. Then the renunciation is not a question of giving something out. It's a question of simply being nirapeksha, disinterested in that same thing. So that's our renunciation, disinterest. Why don't you go to see the latest movie, Avatar, whatever, which I definitely want to see. But anyway, because I'm not interested. Not that, oh, that's horrible, that's terrible. Maya. No, why? I'm having so much fun serving Krishna. Okay, on that happy note, all glory is to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada.
Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Kanvandra Maravinda Nalayata Antarangam Kandar Ako Vikamaniya Vishesha Shobha Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Jami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Jami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Jami Angani Yasa Sakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyan Vipan Vikayanti Giram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Dala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Jami 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 Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Govindam Adi Purusham. Namo Vishnu Pataya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Samaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacha Devasesha Shunyavagana Devasya Chatesa Tarane Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gacchara Siva Sati Gaurata Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gacchara Siva Sati Gaurata Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadara Shiva Sade, Gopakrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. I'm looking at I'm looking at looking on the Hey, Radhe, 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 Jaya Radhe, Jaya Sri Radhe, Jaya Om Shubha. Say the whole Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda should way to get out, she lets it go, Bhakta Vrindi Vijaya. Sri Sri Radha Krishna. Gopi Gopinath, Sai Mukund Radhakunda, Giri Govardhan Vijay, Vrindavan Vijay, Mathura Vijay, Jagannath Swami Vijay. Go, President. All glory. All glory. Glory. Prajipadam Purnam Radasvadanam Sarvagnasnapanam Param Vijay Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahudati Jasar Vachaktish Tatrapi Tani Mata Smaranena Kala Etadrashi Tabak Ripa Bhagavan Mantri Dudaiva Midrashami Hani Nada Shunat Teach Chanat Roriva Sishna Amanila Manadena Diasata Have Natanam Najanam Sundarim Avitam Bhagavati Shikamaye Mama Janmani Janmani Pray Bhakti Hai Way Ainanda Tanuja King Garam Patikam Mam Vishme Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Dhammapada Pankaja Sita Dulisa Prasamba Chintaya Nayanam Garuda Shrutavaya Madanam Kadgara Vidyagira Pulaka Nichitamba Pokada Tavanama Grahane Pavishiti Yudai Shena Chatru Shabda Dunyai Tamjagata Govinda Veda Hingme Ashli Shiva Pada Nashtamam Madarshana Mama Tarat Parot Yata Tataba Vagratu Lambato Madam Victory to the streets of enters the heart of all of us jubilated years. Distinguished the fire of conditional life, birth and death. Their movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone to render all benediction to living beings. And thus we have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. These transcendental names, you've invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even half-fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy name. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for that. One should chant the holy name of the Lord, humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, void of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. Such a state of mind, one could chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I'm your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I've fallen into this ocean of earth that please me, open the dead, and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, and considering a moment to be like 12 years or more, tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his grace, or makes me for the heart by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything. He is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shikshashika ki jai. Very proud of Sundari.